What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Troy Talk. Today I'm flying solo with some rapid fire topics as we tried a couple weeks ago. I think the last episode went really well. So, my goal here today is just to again let you know what happened in this past week of sports. I want to say thank you again to everybody that is listening. I know some people that are listening that aren't even that big of sports fans, but are basically just doing it to support me, which means a lot. Today's episode is going to be fantastic, especially considering all the good news as of late. Today's episode is going to consist of golf, as you probably could have guessed, specifically Joey related. The French Open, which was fantastic. Not usually a big tennis guy, but I'm starting to get into it a little bit more as of late. One of the big topics today is the new NIL law, which is basically name, image, and likeness, which has to do with college athletics and paying players. Also hit a little bit on the NBA playoffs and many more topics. As always, I will try to do a short USC sports recap at the end for those Trojan fans out there. Before we start, remember to follow or subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or your preferred platform so you don't miss an episode. You can follow the podcast on social media at Troy Talk Pod on X or Twitter. You could do it on Blue Sky as well as Instagram. I wanted to give a shout out to the Instagram followers as the most recent reel that I posted regarding Joey's tournament success got over 7.5 thousand views, which is pretty insane to think about. So, as always, please share the podcast with your friends. Anybody you think that might enjoy this at least somewhat. Give them a ring and just tell them, hey, got a good podcast for you. It's a good thing to listen to on your commute, good thing to listen to while you're working out or just doing chores around the house. So, yeah, let's get right into it. All right. So first thing. So if you may or may not know, if you follow me on social media, and you probably watched the previous podcast, Joey had U.S. Open qualifying this past weekend, I guess about a week ago now, at Valencia Country Club down in Southern California. So what U.S. Open qualifying is essentially, and we'll go into this later on in the podcast when we have Joey back on, but that's going to be a couple weeks down the road, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But essentially, 36 holes of golf to decide who goes to the U.S. Open. There are about 8 or 9 tournaments spread out throughout the country, and I think it amounted to 47 people on that specific day, which was last Monday, that qualified for the U.S. Open, along with the rest of the professionals that were already qualified. So Joey was at a qualifier that had about, I think, 85-ish people, and only 4 made it out of that. Expectations going into it, I think we were all optimistic. Obviously, Joey's playing good golf right now, but not to bury the lead, in dramatic fashion, Joey won his playoff and was the last qualifier for the U.S. Open. So long story short, we're going to the U.S. Open this week. And when I say we're, that means the whole crew, Joey most importantly, but his family, my parents. I'm gonna go fly out, a couple friends, and hopefully give him the support that, I think he's earned. He's made us all proud with his performances as of late, and this is this next step for him. I don't think anybody could have predicted it, maybe except for himself, which is that irrational confidence that golfers usually have. But whatever it is he's doing, it's working. So we're just gonna go support him. He's gonna try his best, and who knows, we could be in store for a life-changing week ahead of us. But I'm really glad that we can go along for the ride with him because it's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. But yeah, that's very, very exciting. So we'll keep you updated whenever Joey finishes his stuff and has a little bit of time to cool down. We'll probably try to get a podcast that details the qualifier in more detail with the perspective from Joey, as well as the actual U.S. Open experience, which should be unreal. So looking forward to that coming in the next couple of weeks. All right, next we got the French Open. So, like I said before, not a big tennis guy. Used to love Nadal back in the day. Federer was awesome. Used to just basically watch the finals, and I kind of still do, but I keep up with it a little bit more now. The French Open finals for both women and men were played this past weekend, and they did not disappoint. We'll start with the women because that technically was Saturday. Coco Gauff, which is an American, defeated Sabalenka, who's #1 player in the world right now, and was the favorite, I think, going into it. But she is the first American to win at the French Open since 2015, which was Serena Williams, which is pretty insane to think about. I know Americans don't always have the best success on clay just because we don't play a lot of it here in the United States. So to see her kind of dominate the way that she did, I mean, she I mean, it was a close match, and we were to win 3 sets, and there was a lot of good shots, but she was in control the whole time. So really impressed by just her ability to kind of keep it together, keep the composure, knowing that she's probably the underdog there, but really really impressive. And then today, I mean, probably the best tennis match I've ever seen, which is pretty incredible to say. Jannik Sinner versus Carlos Alcaraz. We know that those two have a lot of history as far as um, I think the last 5 times Carlos Alcaraz has beat Sinner. Sinner's the #1 player in the world. He's out of Italy. Alcaraz is basically a Nadal clone out of Spain. And as we know, Rafa Nadal was a great player on clay. So it's something with that Spanish heritage that just allows him to dominate on clay. But Carlito, as we affectionately call him, is one of the more entertaining players you'll ever see. Just incredible flair to his game. Loves riling up the crowd, but not too obnoxious too. So it's kind of like the perfect balance. Um, but really, like the match today, he went down 2 sets, then he won the next 2 sets, even though he had to fight off 3 match points from Jannik Sinner, which basically meant Jannik Sinner had 3 points to try to win the French Open, and Alcaraz fought him off, won that set, and then the 5th set went to a tiebreaker, which is essentially just kind of like a sudden death, first to 10, whoever wins by 2, wins the French Open, and Alcaraz just dominated the tiebreaker. I mean, I think he went up 7-0 before even dropping a point. So the shots he was hitting, even in that high leverage situation, high pressure situation, were just unreal. A couple volleys, couple drop shots, couple forehand backhand winners. He had everything, and I think he even finished with an ace towards the end there. So overall, just fantastic performance. Highly recommend watching both of the highlights of the women and the men finals, because even if you're not a big tennis fan, you'll be amazed at what they did this weekend. All right, next we have NIL legislation. So I'll try not to bore you with this one, but it is a pretty important topic regarding college athletics. And if you've been following the whole paying players situation, it's been going on for it's a tale as old as time, right? Like, they were doing it illegally, and then they made it legal. But then when they made it legal, there really wasn't any legislation to kind of regulate it at all, and so we're kind of just the Wild West as of late, the past couple of years. And I still think that we're still a little bit in that Wild West, but you're starting to see a little bit more legislation regarding it on just basically what are the rules. But I'll just kind of break it down. The big topics of what this legislation means, because it is pretty groundbreaking. First, it's allowing schools to directly pay players, which they used to have to go through collectives. So that kind of changes the game. For those that have the money, you can just pay players. But we'll talk about the little bit of the salary cap that got implemented a little bit later. Also, every Division I school, actually we'll talk about it right now. Every Division I school can allocate somewhere around 20-ish million dollars a year to paying players, and I'm pretty sure that is just the school in general. They can correct me if I'm wrong. It might just be football related. I would have to double check that. But either way, it's implementing a sort of salary cap, which is pretty big. I think we've all kind of been thinking it's going to go that direction, so that we level the playing field, so that these smaller schools, I think they're still going to get poached a lot, but at least we now have like a salary cap to kind of base what we're paying players off of. And there's actually a new law in California, and I'm not really sure what it is regarding the rest of the United States, but schools will have to publicly report NIL earners, which essentially means we're going to know what each of these athletes are earning above a certain amount of money. I think it was like $5,000 or something like that. So you might see like, oh, whenever you see that tweet that's like clickbaiting, oh, this person is getting paid $8 million. Well, you'll find out exactly what they're getting paid, what the truths are, which I mean, I think transparency is a big thing, right? Like, I think that's very important for college athletics. A lot of shady stuff's happening if you're just, dropping bags left and right behind the scenes. Now we actually have transparency, and whether that helps the California schools, I don't really know if it helps or hurts. Other schools will have a basis on like what they can top, essentially. Like, oh, if USC's paying somebody $6 million, Oregon can come in with 8. They know what that person got paid. However, it also shows people that, like, hey, this guy's getting paid $6 million, and he got paid $6 million. So if you come to USC, you could also get paid $6 million. So I think it works both ways. There's also something about a retroactive back pay, which is essentially student athletes from 2016 to 2014 will be eligible for a share of a $2.7 to $2.8 billion restitution. I mean, to me, that just sounds like a class action lawsuit kind of thing. I'm not sure how it's going to get divvied up, who's going to get paid what. if there's like they're gonna come up with some random score that judges what like how much money you should earn from it, or is it just gonna be a class action lawsuit where everybody earns the same? I'm not really sure. I think Joey, I don't know, this isn't Division One. I would say Joey should give a call to his college golf program, see if he can get some money out of that. And then there's also an oversight committee, the College Sports Commission, which is going to be run by Deloitte, which to my understanding is just like a consulting firm. So they're going to oversee compliance and review third-party deals to determine market value compliance. So again, more just regulation, I guess. I'm not sure if that's just fancy words about having a third party review the deals, if that's going to change much. I'm not sure. We'll see how it plays out. This is the first year this is all going to take place. July 1st is when it officially takes place. So I know a lot of teams were trying to get their NIL deals done before the July 1st deadline. All right, moving on. NBA playoffs. So not going to talk a whole lot about this, but Pacers Thunder is not really a sexy matchup for the general public, but I mean, it is wildly entertaining. I'll give them that. I mean, the Thunder, I think, are the best team this year. So kudos to them for making it, obviously. But the Pacers, there's just something about their voodoo magic. I don't know what deal with the devil that Tyrese Halliburton did, but by some metrics and stats, he is Tyrese Halliburton, the most clutch player of all time, or at least in the playoffs. What he's doing, it just seems like the Pacers are down 10 points at the end of the game, and he wills them back with a bunch of crazy shots, and then gets the ball at the end and hits the game winner. I don't know how he keeps doing it. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I wasn't the biggest believer in him just because of his more of the defensive side of the ball. But if he's this good on offense and this clutch, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the Pacers are very well balanced, I think. They're a solid team, but I don't think that they're that good of a team that if Halliburton wasn't going God mode or hero mode, that they would be in this situation. So, it's about getting hot at the right time. And they may have he was already a superstar, but they may have a true all NBA superstar in their hands, which, can make the difference. Like every team needs that guy to win a title. And he's, arguably one of the best offensive players analytically of all time, which is just a crazy thing to say. Coming out of Iowa State, I know a lot of hoop heads really thought highly of him, and he played really well in Sacramento, but the steps that he's taken to improve his game and consistency, because that's really what he struggled with, I think, earlier on. It's really a pleasure to see. So we'll see. They play tonight, which I'm recording this Sunday. I think the Thunder still are the favorite. I mean, I'm not going to count them out whatsoever. They are the better team, but they need to win this game at home to send it back to Indiana going 1-1. All right, next is the NHL playoffs. We talked, thank you again for the support on the Stanley Cup recap episode. That was awesome, and thanks again for Henry for hopping on that one. As we predicted, Panthers Oilers is going to be a bloodbath. It already has been. Multiple dirty plays, flopping, but ultimately, despite all that, you're seeing some really, really good hockey. McDavid, Draisaitl, and then all the Florida, like the Stars are playing great hockey, which is what you want to see. Two best teams playing in the playoff to decide the Stanley Cup. So we'll see. Hopefully they clean it up a little bit, kind of penalize and punish the Panthers for some of the stuff that they're doing. But unfortunately my Oilers in 4 hot take is gone, but I still think that Oilers in 6 that both Henry and I predicted is still on the table. I think they're the better team. So we'll see. Looking forward to it for sure. All right, some soccer updates for the soccer or football fans out there. The UEFA Nations League, which is, I'm not really sure exactly what that is, but it's a European tournament, which is always cool. Everybody loves national team soccer. So Portugal defeated Spain today, which is a pretty big deal because Portugal, has kind of lived in Spain's shadow over the past couple of years. Spain winning the Euros recently, and just Portugal always thought of as the team that is really good, has a lot of good players, has arguably the best player in the world, and they just never really get over the hump. So they won today in penalties. Really good game, 2-2 going into extra time. Ronaldo even scored one, so really entertaining, and penalties even were entertaining. That's all. You can't always say that either. Portugal had some incredible penalties, so tip my cap to them. All right, so just a little bit of EPL transfer talk. Market's on fire as the season ends. Obviously, everything starts happening. Not all of the deals are set in stone yet, but the rumblings are starting to heat up. Man City and Manchester United are some of the better, I think, off seasons. I can't even think of off the top of my head. I know Manchester City got a left back out of Wolves who's a really good player. They're getting Ryan Cherky out of Lyon, who's arguably top five young player in the world. Really, really good player. And then I'm blanking on who else they're getting. But they're reloading. It's just, it's typical Man City buying players, paying them a lot of money, and they're going to compete every year. They're going to be back next year, being as dangerous as ever, and are arguably probably the favorite. Man U also, I mean, I bagged on them a couple weeks ago in that episode, but somehow they have the money and they bought Cunha, they bought Mbeumo, or at least I think they agreed to terms with Mbeumo, who's out of Brentford, who I think we all said on our podcast that we really really liked. So will it matter? Not sure. Obviously, they still have to implement in the system of the coach, but undoubtedly their attacking talent got a lot better in the offseason. Another big one, Ange Postecoglou. Hopefully I said that right, out of Tottenham. He's the Tottenham head coach, the manager, and just won the Europa League and got fired. So pretty incredible. I mean, I think that's kind of a brutal move for Ainge. I know we were criticizing his stubbornness, but we all kind of knew he was a good coach, and with a little bit of time, maybe just tweaking his tactics for the EPL, I think we could have seen some success out of Tottenham. But I guess they valued the EPL over other things and gave him the boot. But from my understanding, Thomas Frank is the leader in the clubhouse as far as who people think are going to be who's going to be the next Tottenham manager. And I'm a big fan of Thomas Frank. We talked about it on the podcast. Just a really good manager, X's and O's wise, gets the most out of his players, good at recruiting. So I think if Tottenham can snag him, that's going to be a big coup. And then lastly, a little bit of Arsenal talk. Not a whole lot's going on, but Zubamendi, who was he's a midfielder, plays for the Spanish national team, and scored a goal today, actually. Linked to Arsenal very heavily. I think they just basically need to do the physical, and he's basically a done deal. Very exciting player. I think he'll make us a lot better next year, give us a lot more midfield presence that I think we were lacking a little bit with Partey's inconsistency. Also Benjamin Sesko, who's the forward. That's the big thing with Arsenal, right? Who's going to score the goals? Who's going to be up top? That's who people seem to think is going to sign with Arsenal. I think they're just in preliminary talks right now, but this appears to be a little bit more advanced talks than before. So we'll see. He's going to cost about 60 million, and he's younger, but I think his potential's through the roof. Not sure how much I really like the move, but I know we're going to have to get somebody just from a pure numbers perspective. So it could work out really well, Could be another Darwin Nunez, but hopefully he turns into the next Alexander Isak. So yeah, season starts probably in a couple months. So we have a couple more weeks of just transfer nonsense, and I'll update you as I hear things. And then lastly, I think it's a pretty short episode today. The USC Sports Report. Quite actually a bit of stuff with USC going on. I mean, football. We talked about the NIL and how it affects USC, but more specifically, this weekend was a big official visit weekend. And just to quickly explain what official visit means, it's the recruit gets one official visit, unless they decommit, that gets super complicated. But and a lot of the commits that visited this weekend were USC commits, and big time, like USC commits, to the point where they're building momentum for the class. So the people that were uncommitted at this official visit weekend, you may end up seeing them commit to USC in the coming weeks. And there was already one today. Peyton Dyer, he's a cornerback out of, I want to say the South, I think Georgia, if I recall. 4-star player, pretty good. I don't know a whole lot about him. I have to do my research, which is a good segue, because I think I want to do a recruiting podcast in maybe a couple weeks once all the official visits are over and the dust settles, because that way we can talk about pretty much everybody, and if somebody decommits or commits, we'll have all the updated information. But real quick one, Ryder Lyons, for those football fans out there, didn't decommit from USC, but canceled his official visit, and it was kind of confirmed that USC was moving on from him. One of my favorite players in the next class, technically, even though he's taking his Mormon mission, so he's going to be a year later than his actual class indicates. I think he's a future Heisman winning trophy quarterback if he goes to the right situation. However, I think BYU probably has the most momentum right now. As mentioned, he is Mormon. They have NIL money now, so you might see him kind of try to pave his own way and And I think he'll succeed at BYU. I'm just not sure what his ceiling is. Having BYU as the team versus even an Oregon. And I hate to say it, but even an Oregon, or even compared to USC. So we'll talk about that more at the recruiting podcast, though. Basketball. USC added a transfer from Dartmouth, Ryan Cornish. He's kind of a point guard, combo guard, really similar to Clark Slatcher in the sense the recruit from last year who went to Pennsylvania. He's put up really good numbers, all conference player, probably even a little bit better than Clark Slatcher. But it just remains to be seen the role that he's going to have with USC and how many minutes. As you know, a lot of the USC basketball team this year is going to be consisting of transfers, if not literally every one of them. So it's going to be a completely new team with completely new roles, and Muss is going to have to figure out a way to implement them and get cohesion out of them. Because I mean, this past year's team wasn't the best, but it was pretty good, and I think we saw at times it wasn't cohesive. So I think that's really going to be the biggest hurdle in next year, because we have the players. I think we have one of a top 3 like talent-wise team in the Big Ten. We just have to see how they work together. A quick little decommitment, Keza Gifa. That's basically who Ryan Cornish replaced. He committed like a week ago, maybe even less than that. From High Point, small point guard, good player, but decommitted. I'm not sure what the reason was, if it was a money thing or USC preferred the Dartmouth transfer over him. I'm not really sure, but it's not a huge loss. He was probably going to be the third guard off the bench anyway, third point guard. So we'll see. But in other news, Desmond Claude, former USC point guard of last year, who's one of the better players, if not the best player on the team, he's had a whole saga of transfer portal nonsense. He entered the portal even though USC offered him quite a bit of money, tried to, kind of extort, for lack of a better term, other teams to give him like a $5 million payday. He was rumored to go to Alabama, Florida, and basically all these teams filled their team before him, and he lost out. And as a result, ended up committing to Washington. So a little bit of irony in this commitment. One, he probably got half of it, maybe not half, but lost probably $1 million of NIL from what USC would have paid him. Number 2 part of irony is that the reason he gave for leaving USC was he wanted to play next to a more of a point guard, so that so essentially this year, Wesley Yates and Desmond Claude played a very similar role, 2 ball dominant guards. So he kind of wanted to be the main focus. And then lo and behold, Wesley Yates also transferred to Washington. So now they're going to be playing together next year. So obviously it had nothing to do with play fit or style. He was trying to get the most money. It backfired on him. That's what happens. He messed around and find out. Kind of situation. So another interesting thing is a former assistant coach, Quincy Pondexter, who originally came from Washington, went to USC last year, and now is back at Washington because he is the uncle of Wesley Yates. So basically there's 3 USC players from the last year's team and coaches on Washington. So we're kind of the feeder school of Washington now. We lost Avery Howell there. And I think Taylor Mays left the USC football coaching staff, went there. So not a good look for us, but at least it's not Oregon, so it could be worse. USC baseball is next. I think this was about a week ago now. They lost to Oregon State after a really strong opening to their College World Series. They won the first 2 games, looked like they were doing pretty well, and then ran into a buzzsaw at Oregon State. Just got absolutely dismantled by Oregon State, but I thought you saw a lot of positives this year. Even making the postseason is a big positive. So kudos to Coach Stank out there, and I'm hoping with the new home field next year and maybe a good portal and recruiting class, we should be heading in the right direction. Of note, we did lose our number 1 pitcher, Caden Aoki, who was an absolute warrior, true Trojan, best pitcher by far over the last couple of years, especially like in the clutch situations in the postseason when it mattered. So he, I think, went to Georgia, if I recall. Not really sure what's up with that. Maybe he just got a good payday. I don't think he really is going to become an MLB player just because of his lack of speed. So I think he throws around 89 miles an hour, which is not really an MLB level, type fastball. So hopefully he was just getting a really big payday going to Georgia, and he's earned every penny of it. Get paid while you can. So tip of the cap to him. He was a good Trojan while he was here. quick little golf update. The USC women's golf. Quick shout out to Catherine Park, who's USC's best player on the women's team. Going to be a senior this upcoming year if she stays. Had an undefeated Arnold Palmer Cup over the weekend, which is essentially like I believe it's a men and women combo event of U.S. versus Europe, if I recall. So I think the U.S. won it, as they usually do, I think. But she's a stud. Hopefully she comes back and has Player of the Year type potential for sure. In men's golf, I know they added 2 top 500 amateurs, which is good. I mean, we're accumulating talent. This year was a huge step in the right direction, which I know there's a low bar set with USC men's golf over like the last 5 or 6 years, but I'm hoping, we were one position away from making the playoffs or the postseason. So if we can, make the postseason next year, I think that's another step in the right direction. And it seems like everybody's developing, which is one of the biggest problems we've had. We've had good players and they just haven't developed. They would be really good coming in and then they would leave, sometimes not even on the team or not even playing golf. So we can't have that. But I think we're heading in the right direction. I think the last thing I was going to talk about was the USC track and field. One of USC's best sports, if we're being honest. They won the indoors earlier this year and they have a top 5 team in both the men's and women's. Just absolute monsters in the sprints, 100 meter, 200 meters. Do also pretty well in like the long jump and the high jump as well. So will they win? I'm not sure. It's going to require everybody to be on their A game because we've had a couple injuries and a couple people not really perform super well, especially at the Big Ten Championship. So if we can kind of put that behind us, get a little healthy, and show up when we need to. In the prelims, when I think that was about a week ago as well, a lot of people qualified. So I think to the point where we are one of the favorites to win it all. So that's all you can really ask for, the opportunity to do it, and we just got to go out there and win the races and finish high. I think that's all it amounts to. Well, I think that about covers most of it. I think we got a good variety of sports. Thank you for listening to my part in the interruption hot takes. I would like to keep doing this whenever I can kind of squeeze it in. My goal is after we get back from Oakmont this past week, we find a time, maybe this weekend, if, God forbid, Joey actually is free this weekend. We don't want him to be free because we want him to be playing golf. If he makes the cut, that would just be absolutely massive. And if he's in contention, we might be talking about it something else all entirely. So moral of the story is I'm hoping to get Joey and Mike back on the podcast so we can talk about everything that's been going on and really get their perspectives because Joey's perspective is by far the best way to kind of explain what all this is. I mean, we can say all we want, but he's the one going through all of this and all of these high pressure situations. So I think hearing it from his mouth would be the best. So that'll probably be in the next week or two, hopefully, and then recruiting podcasts, as I said, and maybe just start to talk about college football as we get a little bit closer. I have some thoughts about handicapping, have some thoughts about USC, and just college football in general. So I think that's probably on the docket for the next month or two. I'm probably going to be traveling quite a bit as well. So we'll fit it in. My goal is to try to do this once a week. It may not happen that way just because of time constraints and other things I already had planned, but I really do want to try to get this out to you guys once a week. And once again, thank you for the support, and we'll catch you again next time.